leadership style of Google's leadership, which includes Larry Page and Sergey Brin. So I chose to research leadership because I think that it's an important aspect of today's society because of increasing globalization. It's becoming harder to apply leadership skills to a diverse community, and therefore in studying successful leaders, we may be able to find certain skills that can be used today that work for various types of organizations. According to Bass and Stockdale's Handbook of Leadership and Melissa Horner of the University of North Texas, leadership theories have changed over time, from looking at a person's traits and determining the extent of success of the leader to viewing leadership as a process. I've chosen Genghis Khan and Google as the two examples to compare. Genghis Khan, because he's a unique leader and accomplished feats that would have been unimaginable at the time. According to John Mann and Daniel Goldman, Khan was an exceptional leader that defied all odds to obtain success. I chose Google because, as we all know, Google has a unique and unheard of leadership, although we see that it is becoming more and more common due to Google's continued success. In an age where technology is a basis for most, if not all, innovation, Google becomes an epitome that companies want to follow. Every company wants to innovate like Google. And according to former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, the secret of Google's innovation lies in its leadership. To compare these two entities, I will be using the theory of transformational leadership by Bernard Bass and James Burns to first identify each as a transformational leader and then compare their techniques. Transformational leadership can be described as a process wherein leaders and followers help each other to achieve a higher level of morale and motivation, as said by James Burns. In addition to this, I will also apply the theory of leadership as a process to each of them and show how they exemplify it. The theory of leadership as a process focuses on the relationship between the leader and the follower. I have chosen these theories because they are fairly recent and therefore will be helpful in the present and the future. This will provide the research community with a new understanding since the comparison of Genghis Khan and Google through leadership has never been done before. And so we come to my research question. How does the leadership style of Genghis Khan compare to that of Google's leadership? In order to answer this question, I will first be comparing Genghis Khan and Google separately to the 4 components of transformational leadership, which I will go into more detail in my method and findings. Then I will be showing how they exemplify leadership as a process, and then I will be addressing uncontrollable factors that have affected their leadership. So my method. Since this paper involves explaining a relationship and a qualitative approach will be used. Qualitative metasynthesis is defined as the theories, grand narratives, generalizations, or interpretive translations produced from the integration or comparison of findings from qualitative studies, according to Sandalowski, Doherty, and Emden. As described by these researchers, this method has 3 different approaches. One, wherein the qualitative researcher is when the researchers gather from the investigations of the same investigator. The second approach is wherein the research is obtained from multiple investigators. And the third, wherein the quantitative methods are used to gather qualitative data. Since this paper cites and uses multiple leadership theories, in addition to the information on Genghis Khan and Google, the second approach will be used. My first step was to find a topical similarity that is a core aspect of the paper, which is my research question, as it addresses the scope and parameters of my research. The second step was to choose what to include and what not to, which was completed when I decided on the theories of transformational leadership and leadership as a process. And the third step was finding the similarities and differences between the 2 entities being compared, in this case, Genghis Khan and Google. And this moves us on to my findings and analysis. To give you a brief organization of my findings, first I demonstrated transformational leadership in Genghis Khan and Google separately, and then I compared them. And then following this, the findings include how both leaderships view leadership as a process, and the key aspects focusing on the interaction between the leader and the follower will be used to do this. And finally, I conclude with my uncontrollable factors that affect the leadership. So first, I determined Genghis Khan to be a transformational leader using the four concepts, according to Bernard Bass, of transformational leadership, which are charismatic leadership, which is defined as a leader who is a role model and has a vision that is shared by his or her followers. Inspirational motivation, which is how the leader inspires and motivates people while emphasizing shared goals. Intellectual stimulation, which is encouraging creativity and questioning of methods amongst followers. And individual consideration, which is focusing on each individual's needs and fulfilling them while encouraging leader-follower interactions. So Khan used divine backing, using his religion of shamanism to prove his credibility, and used it to influence his followers of his vision of conquest and unity. For motivation, Khan used himself as an example by sharing the hardships of his subjects, making them believe that if he could survive the war that brought the tribes together, then so could they, which motivated them to win the wars. They also wanted peace, which they would obtain after fighting the threats. He did not, however, exhibit intellectual stimulation, which is because a new empire had been formed, and he was scared that if people started to think for themselves and come up with their own methods, then once again, the empire would be disunited. For individual consideration, he worked to develop abilities within each one. For example, he made his adopted son the head of chancery despite the kid being part of the enemy tribe. As for Google demonstrates charismatic leadership in the form of shared visions, don't be evil, and continued innovation, for example. They inculcate motivation by asking employees to fulfill their own personal goals and overcome personal challenges, which motivates them to work because they're working to better themselves. Intellectual stimulation is seen in many forms at Google, such as working in small groups, not too much interference from the managers, and etc. In this way, they're encouraged to find solutions to problems on their own and are welcome to voice their ideas to higher level officials. They know the differences in each individual and therefore give a certain amount of time, which is theirs, in which they can think and pursue what they want. Genghis Khan and Google both have a shared vision. They both inspire motivation by having followers think about their personal aspirations and goals. They both emphasize developing others' abilities, acknowledging that they may be different. And intellectual stimulation is where they differ, which is due to the circumstances and the gap in time, which would be a limitation. Genghis Khan and Google also both pursue or have pursued leadership as a process because of their interactions with their followers as seen by shared visions, instilling motivation, or developing abilities. However, there are certain uncontrollable factors such as the circumstances that shaped Genghis Khan and gave him the motivation to unite the Mongolian tribes, and the childhoods of Page and Bryn. Page was inspired by Nikola Tesla, who was a great inventor and wanted to innovate just like him. However, he realized that Tesla's problem lied in not being able to share his inventions with the world. And Page made this the key aspect of Google, as we can see. Both Sergey and Larry's dads were professors at universities of math and computer science, which exposed them to computers at a very young age. And also, they were born in the same year, they were enrolled at the same university, and these kind of similarities helped them click and build Google together. In this paper, Genghis Khan will be compared to Google. Sorry, never mind that. So for the conclusion and implications, my conclusion is basically that there will be a new understanding because Genghis Khan and Google will be compared, and their leadership styles. There will be new light shed on leadership styles. I will also be building upon theories of transformational leadership and leadership as a process, and we'll be applying these theories in practice, which would be helpful to the scholarly community. And so what we can say is that they are comparable, other than a few exceptions. And these exceptions can be defined as, since this paper is comparing an empire to a multinational organization, it may not be as wholesome as a paper comparing similar organizations. So I have to keep that aspect in mind. Also, another limitation of this paper is the gap in time between the existence of Khan and Google, and therefore the purpose and intentions are different. Their circumstances were different. For example, it was a rural area back in that time. However, now we live in a developed world wherein we can study leadership and therefore we can make better decisions, which Google had done according to Eric Schmidt as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakhi.